This is a reading from Modern Saints by Anne Ball. Saint Julie Billiart. Saint Julie Billiart, S.N.D. de N. Mary Rose Julie Billiart, born 1751, died 1816, born in France, died in Belgium, and died at the age of 64. As a child, playing school was Julie Billiart's favorite game. Usually, Julie had the role of teacher by wish of the other children. When she went to work as a field laborer at the age of 16 to help support her family, she began to teach for real. She sat on a haystack during the noon recess and told the biblical parables to the workers. Julie carried on this mission of teaching throughout her life, and the congregation she founded continues her work. Jewel was the fifth of 7 children. Her parents at one time had been well-to-do, but at the time of Julie's birth, they lived on the proceeds of a small linen draper's shop. She attended a little one-room school in Coveley to learn to read and write. Julie enjoyed all her studies, but she was particularly attracted to the religion lessons taught by the parish priest. This priest recognized something different and special in his young pupil. He allowed her secretly to make her first communion at the age of 9, when the normal age at that time in France was 13. In addition to her catechism lessons, the priest taught Julie how to make short mental prayers, to control her fiery temper, and to develop a great love of Jesus in the Eucharist. In a mixture of innocence and wisdom beyond her age, Julie said, "I have to die of shame to think I have not already died of gratitude to my good God." The good God is a typically French expression, and it was Julie's favorite. With her, however, this was not just a pious national comment. Each time Julie spoke the words, "the good God," she meant them with all the sincerity of her heart. At home, Julie had plenty of practice in controlling her temper. Her younger brother constantly teased and played tricks on her. He was, in short, a pest. Julie tried not to react in anger, and she played with him frequently. Her older sister was blind for many years, and Julie, with her warm and loving heart, spent long hours reading to her and helping to cheer her life. Debts and poor investments reduced Julie's family to poverty. In an attempt to help to support the family, Julie overworked. A murder attempt on her father shocked her nervous system badly. A period of extremely poor health for Julie began and was to last for 30 years. For 22 of these years, she was a completely paralyzed invalid, unable to move about even with the aid of crutches. All of her sufferings and pain she offered up to her good God. Visitors were so impressed with her cheerful acceptance of these trials that her reputation for sanctity began to spread over the countryside. Many came to her bedside to hear her talk about the lives of the saints, the catechism, the parables, and the good God. When the French Revolution broke out, Julie offered her home as a hiding place for loyal priests. Rumors of the aid Julie gave to these faithful sons of the church reached the ears of the revolutionaries, and Julie became hunted prey. Once, while she was staying at the home of friends, an angry mob arrived. They planned to burn the hated devotee on a huge bonfire made of church furnishings. Hastily, Julie was hidden on the bottom of a rude cart and covered with hay. While a servant distracted the mob's attention, she was smuggled to safety. 5 times in 3 years, Julie was forced to flee in secret to avoid compromising her friends. Each move troubled her health more and more. At last, more dead than alive, she almost completely lost the powers of speech. During this time, 16 of Julie's Carmelite friends were led to the guillotine. In desperately poor health and without the consolation of priestly care, Julie was privileged to receive an astounding vision at this time. She saw her crucified Lord surrounded by a large group of religious women, dressed in a habit she had never seen before. An inner voice told her that these would be her daughters, and that she would begin an institute devoted to the Christian education of young girls. How impossible this project must have seemed to the poor invalid. Nevertheless, she accepted this revelation with the faith that if God had chosen her for the work, it would be accomplished. In 1794, Julie met the Baroness de Bourdon, a rich young woman who had cheated the guillotine only through the death of Robespierre. Together, these 2 women founded the Sisters of Notre-Dame de Namur. At Amiens, the 2 women and a few companions began living a religious life in 1803. In 1804, Julie met the missionary priest Enfantin. Recognizing a favored soul in Julie, he secretly resolved to obtain her cure. He asked her to begin a novena to the Sacred Heart with him for a special intention, not telling her what the intention was. On the 5th day, when he visited her, he found her seated alone in the garden. Abruptly, he said, "Mother, if you have any faith, take one step in honor of the Sacred Heart." Julie arose and put her foot to the ground for the first time in 22 years. After a few steps, the priest made her promise not to mention what had happened. On the 9th day of the novena, he removed the obligation of secrecy, and Julie walked to the dining room where the rest of the sisters were. The stunned sisters clearly heard her first words to them, "Te Deum laudamus." Immediately after her thanksgiving, Julie began to help some missionaries by traveling to neighboring towns to give instructions. Some of her friends who knew how recently she had been an invalid begged her to stay off her feet and rest. Laughingly, she replied, "Since the good God gave me back my legs, surely he intended that I should use them." In 1805, Julie and 3 companions made their profession and took their final vows. She was elected as Mother General of the young congregation. Less than a year later, there were 18 sisters. Soon, schools and houses were beginning to grow in several dioceses. No lasting success is reached except through the cross. For the Sisters of Notre Dame, the cross took the form of misunderstandings with the bishop and some members of the clergy. In 1809, the bishop wrote to Mother Julie that she was free to retire to any diocese she chose, but the houses given to her order would be used to train true Sisters of Notre Dame. Calmly and with no bitterness, Mother Julie prepared her sisters for this terrible blow. She never failed in her charity and did not entreat her sisters to follow her. Unanimously, they chose to go with her to Namur, where they had been offered a home. From 1808, Mother Julie had been given a gift of healing. Once, upon returning from a trip, she found 23 of her sisters in the infirmary with typhoid fever. She addressed them with these words, "My children, if you have any faith, arise." All but 4 immediately arose, cured. These 4 left the order after a long illness. Julie also cured a young girl suffering from bad eyes by praying with her and making the sign of the cross on her eyes. Both of these miracles, along with several others, were examined and approved during the canonical inquiry into Mother Julie's life. In 1812, when the same priest who had had Mother Julie sent from the Diocese of Amiens recalled her and publicly repented of his actions, she treated him with humility and charity rather than adopting an attitude of triumph. In 1815, Mother Julie taxed her ever poor health by nursing the wounded and feeding the starving left from the Battle of Waterloo. For the last 3 months of her life, she again suffered much. She died peacefully on April the 8th, 1816. Julie was beatified on May 13th, 1906, and was canonized by Pope Paul VI in 1969. Here's a picture of her. And the caption says, Saint Julie Billiart, who cured 19 out of 23 nuns of typhoid fever with the words, "My children, if you have any faith, arise." This picture was probably painted from memory by one of her sisters after her death. 2. Blessed Philippine Duchesne. Blessed Philippine Duchesne, R.S.C.J, Rose Philippine Duchesne, born 1769, died 1852. Born in France, died in the United States at the age of 83. The name of Rose Philippine Duchesne is the first inscribed on the Pioneer Roll of Fame in the Jefferson Memorial Building in St. Louis, Missouri. After coming to America at the age of 49, she worked 34 years in the mission fields of the Society of the Sacred Heart, bringing education and love to the people of the area. Philippine was born in Grenoble, France, on August the 29th, 1769. As a child, she often accompanied her mother on visits to the sick poor. To the children of these homes, she gave many of her toys and other small possessions. When beggars came to her own door, she gave them her spending money. When her parents protested that they gave her these things for her pleasure, Philippine rather tartly replied, "This is my pleasure." At the age of 12, Philippine was sent to a boarding school run by the Visitation Sisters. Here she developed a deep devotion to the Sacred Heart and determined to become a sister herself. Although she did not speak of this vocation, her father suspected that she was inclining in this direction. He was a liberal and somewhat anti-clerical, and so he removed her from this school. He sent her to dancing school and had her tutored along with her cousins. When Philippine was 18, her father introduced her to a young man whom he intended her to marry. She informed her father that although the young man was most pleasant, she had decided to become a sister. Somewhat to her surprise, she got away with this statement, although her father refused to discuss the possibility of her entering a novitiate. One day, on a visit with her aunt to the convent of Saint Marie, Philippine, simply stayed, leaving her poor aunt to go and face her father's wrath. A day or so later, she thrashed the matter out with her family through the protective grill and finally won her father's grudging consent to stay. She thought she was settled for life, but the French Revolution broke out and her father forbade her to make her vows and removed her from the convent. She went in obedience in silence, hoping one day to bring her father back to the church. During this trial, as in all others, she was to endure in her long life. She went for consolation to the one heart that would never fail her. In the years of the Revolution, Philippine was saddened by the loss of her beloved mother. Her father, who had become a lawyer in the Revolution, was the cause of much heartbreak to her on account of his actions and views. For 11 years, Philippine worked for her family at home and performed works of mercy for political prisoners, the poor, and the sick. When someone was dying, Philippine would bring a priest to administer the last sacraments. At Grenoble, she often risked imprisonment for her charitable ministrations to the victims of the terror awaiting the guillotine. Her former convent had been turned into a prison for political prisoners, and she helped them in any way she could. Driven by the desire to spread the news of Christ and his kingdom, Philippine rounded up a group of street urchins and began to teach them catechism in her home. At last, the revolution was over, although it was still not entirely safe to resume the religious habit. Philippine bought her old convent from the government and invited her former superior and sisters to join her there. The superior was over 80 years old and could not regain a firm control. The life was very austere, and one by one the sisters left, leaving only Philippine. Philippine was saddened by this, but she accepted the failure as God's will. A priest friend suggested that she offer both herself and the monastery to Madame Madeleine Sophie Barat and her newly founded Society of the Sacred Heart. The offer was accepted, and Philippine became a member of the new society. For 12 years, Sister Philippine lived under the direction of this gentle and saintly foundress. Mother Barat helped her control her impetuous nature and bend it to the will of God. In 1818, after many years of pleading with her superior, Sister Philippine and 4 other sisters left France for the mission fields of America. At this time, she was already 49 years old. In America, these sisters literally carved their foundations out of the wilderness, in spite of intense poverty and freezing weather. At times, it was so cold that the milk froze in the bucket from the barn to the house. The sisters faced misunderstanding, language difficulties, and disease. Through it all, Mother Philippine and the sisters held to their goals of bringing Christian education to the pioneer children and spreading devotion to the Sacred Heart. A letter from the bishop who invited the sisters to America shows the spirit in which the pioneer sisters were to work. You have come, you say, seeking the cross. Well, you have taken exactly the right road to find it. 1,000 unforeseen difficulties may arise. Your establishment may grow slowly at first. Physical privations may be added, and those more keenly felt, such as lack of spiritual help under particular circumstances. Be ready for all. One must plow before one raises a crop. You and I shall spend our lives in this thankless task. Our successors will reap the harvest in this world. Let us be content to reap it in the next. This letter was to prove prophetic. Many hardships and trials did attend the foundations in America. In spite of all difficulties, however, Mother Philippine and the sisters kept their house in the Sacred Heart, and their work slowly but surely began to prosper. Once, in the early days of one of the foundations, where the sisters were desperately poor, Mother Philippine's brother offered to pay her return fare to France. She wrote to her sister, "Tell him to use the money to pay the passage of 2 more nuns coming to America." The Jesuits of the Missouri Mission Field claim a special debt to Mother Philippine. Their novitiate was moved to a log cabin at Florissant in 1823. A sturdy band of 12 Jesuits arrived to prepare for a lifelong mission to the Indians. Toward this little group, which included the missionary Father Duchesne, Apostle of Kansas, Mother Philippine showed the greatest charity. Father William Robinson, S.J., said of Mother Philippine Duchesne, she saved the struggling Missouri mission and prevented it from failing through absolute lack of resources. She cooked, sewed, and deprived herself to share the little she had. In addition, Mother Philippine considered it a great joy to be able to help these fathers with their schools for Indian children. For many years, she had dreamed of being a missionary to the American Indians. At last, when she was 72, Mother Philippine and 3 other sisters went to the Potawatomi at Sugar Creek, Kansas, to establish a school for the young Indian girls. Here, the sisters were greeted by a group of Indians in festive dress on horses decked out with plumes. After a welcoming speech by the chief, several hundred braves and squaws filed past to shake hands. As their house was not ready, the sisters stayed in a vermin-infested cabin belonging to a member of the tribe. There was a complete lack of privacy, as the cabin was always filled with visitors. Some of them brought the sisters gifts of human scalps as a mark of their esteem. To her great sorrow, Mother Philippine could not learn the difficult language of these Indians, and so could not teach them. The priest at this mission had known Mother Philippine before she came. Though he recognized the drawbacks of her mission plans, her age, and the probability that she would not be able to speak the language, he nevertheless wrote, "Let her come. If she can't work, she will obtain the success of the mission by her prayers." Although they could not communicate with her verbally, the Indians loved Mother Philippine. They named her the woman who prays always, for she spent much of her time praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament for the success of their mission. Mother Philippine was recalled to St. Charles after only a year. Although she went willingly in obedience to her superiors, she felt the loss of her Indian children keenly. In a letter to a priest friend, she wrote, "I live in solitude and am able to employ all my time in going over the past and in preparing for death, but I cannot put away the thought of the Indians, and in my ambition I fly to the Rockies." During the last 10 years of her life, Philippine spent most of her time praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament for the Church, her society, and its missions. She died peacefully on November 18, 1852. Many years before, she and Father Desmet had made a pact that the first of them to die would obtain a particular favor for the other. Immediately after her death, Father Desmet received the favor. Mother Philippine's love of prayer and the constancy of her devotion to the mission fields had impressed all who met her. Her funeral was attended not only by a great number of religious, but also by many lay persons, among them a number of Protestants. 3 years after her burial, the superiors decided to transfer the remains to a different burial place on the grounds. During this exhumation, the body of Philippe Duchesne was found to be incorrupt. Although following the laws of nature, it has since been reduced to bones and to ashes. The only true photograph of her was made at the time of this first exhumation. Today, her relics remain at the shrine dedicated to her honor in St. Charles, Missouri. Philippine was beatified by Pope Pius XII in 1940. Here's a picture of her. The caption says, "Blessed Philippine Duchesne, who secretly aided prisoners awaiting the guillotine during the French Revolution, then crossed the ocean at age 49 to spend the rest of her life as a missionary in the American wilderness." This is a painting of Blessed Philippine.